Hello and welcome to The Witch Source. I'm Whitney, of course, and today I have with me Adam Barralet, and he is someone I met through Lady Tamara. Um, and yeah, he is in Australia, which is fun, and you guys are going to love his accent. And so, welcome, Adam.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
First question. When did you first fall in love with or discover magic or the craft?
Yeah, it probably started when I was around 15 or 16. And my parents just separated, and my mum was kind of, I guess, discovered a bit of the new age. And she'd found a little crystal shop, and she was buying, essential oils and crystals and that kind of thing. So I went with her one day, and I bought my first crystal. When I bought my little crystal, they give you a sheet telling you what all the different crystals do. And the next week I bought another crystal and another crystal. And in that shop, I'd also buy essential oils. And at the same time, I found a really interesting book on one of the shelves called Scott Cunningham's Guide for the Solitary Practitioner, which was all about being a solitary practitioner of Wicca. And that was kind of my introduction into spirituality, into magic, and then actually being able to give it a bit of a name in the name of Wicca or witchcraft. And that's kind of how it all began.
So, when do you feel like it started to really develop and get really serious for you? Like, this is it.
Yeah, obviously those teenage years are tricky for us all. And I was lucky enough, as you said, I live in Australia. I grew up in a bushland kind of area where, it's not unusual for me to see kangaroos and that kind of wildlife every day. So nature I've always had that really strong connection to. So whereas many other teenagers might lock themselves in their bedrooms when they're kind of sorting out what life's all about, I would normally go and sit outside, and especially at night, I'd love to sit outside under the stars and that type of thing. So nature was becoming a really important of, I guess, who I was in that way. And that book that I mentioned before kind of started to talk about how I felt there was magic in nature, and this book was actually putting it into a form that said, you're not the only one who sees this magic in nature type of thing. So I
Mm.
really started to kind of get interested in this. And I told a couple of friends about it, and they said, oh, well, you should check out the Church of Wicca,
Mhm.
which was the church that was run by, you mentioned before, Lady Tamara. Now, I imagined it looking very similar to what we might imagine some kind of Christian church to look like, but you'd go along and everyone would sit in rows and um, that they just talk about nature things instead of Christian things. I was like, okay, I'll go along. Went along, met Lady Tamara, started training under her, was initiated a couple of years later. And since then, it's always been part of who I am. I've never would say that I'm a full-time witch, but I am a witch every day of my life by bringing aspects of nature into my life.
Very cool. So, how old were you when you initiated?
I was 18.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't realize you were that young. That's awesome.
Yes, yeah. So it's been I'm getting close to 30 years as an initiate.
Wow. That's so cool. Okay. So, continue the story. What's the progression? What happened after you became an initiate? What was that progression like of going further?
Yeah, so I continued at the point in time. Lady Tamara, my high priestess, was living in Western Australia as well. So we would gather with the circle or the covenant at that time every full moon, and that would happen. That like many groups, it ebbed and flowed in size throughout the years. But being there once a month, you learn different skills. You learn casting circles. You work your way through all the different things that there are to learn. That was kind of what I was doing in that kind of group gathering. But where I was really submerging myself in my love for nature was in crystals. I specialize in crystals, in essential oils, animal wisdom, and also in astrology. So for many, many years, just I guess through my 20s, I was kind of doing my own thing, doing stuff with crystals, miraculous things were happening, going, that's kind of cool, let's try that. And like many people, when you grow up in a small city, Perth is the most isolated city in the world. So the next closest city is a 3.5 hour plane ride. You
Mm.
kind of go, this is boring. So I went somewhere. I wanted to go somewhere bigger. So I moved to a city in Australia people might have heard of called Melbourne. That wasn't big enough for me, so I went to Toronto in Canada. That wasn't big enough for me, so I went and lived in New York City in the US. And then I realised actually, there's no place like home. I miss being around nature and came back to Perth. When that happened, I started the first job when I came back. A friend was running a crystal shop, and she said, "Do you want a job?" I'm like, "Yeah, that would be great." And that's where for the first time ever, I knew that so people that like crystals and like essential oils, but I was amazed how many people love these different gifts of nature, but they buy them all, they take them home, and they don't know what to do with them. Now,
Mm.
through that, it kind of came to be that I was invited to write my first book on crystals. I then started getting asked to teach at other crystal shops. And over the last, it would now be 15 years, basically I work full time as an author and a teacher, traveling around the world and teaching online, teaching people how to work with crystals, astrology, essential oils, animal wisdom, that type of thing from the context of Wicca, although most people wouldn't realise that what they're actually learning is an aspect of Wicca or witchcraft.
Okay, very cool. So for you, is there a distinction between, I've got so many questions, but this one just popped up. So, but between Wicca and witchcraft, is there a distinction for you?
Um, to be honest, I personally interchange them quite freely. I know some people might define witchcraft as more being the actual the practice, the casting of the circles, the kind of more structured aspect, whereas Wicca is a bit more way of life. And what's really important to me and what I like to teach to people that I'm teaching in witchcraft or in crystals or essential oils is how you, you don't want to become, there's the term Sunday Christian. You don't want to become a Sunday witch where you do your witchy things, but then the other 6 days of the week, you disregard all connection to nature and that type of thing. So I live, breathe, and teach how to live in harmony with nature. And I guess for me, that would be that kind of Wiccan lifestyle.
Okay, okay. So, because I know here in the US, when we think of Wicca, we think of the religion itself. And so, and I know that that has its roots to, Gerald, for us anyway, here, as far as we know and have been taught, has its roots back to like Gerald Gardner and, like the 1950s when it was officially made a thing. Um, do you feel like the craft is older than that?
Oh, very. My connections and my interest is very much. I've got European ancestry, and I
Mm.
guess that I guess to bring in another word to the mix, that kind of pagan way of living in harmony with nature, the cycles, the eight main pinnacle points of the solar year. Those are the things that kind of dictate how I live my life and different things that I focus on. So yes, it's. I feel the connection, an ancestral connection to being connected to the earth. It would be far beyond just the kind of the creation of Wicca in the 1950s or so.
Right, right. Very cool. So, is your book still available? And give us the title.
Yeah, so my first book is called Crystal Connections. That is available from a couple of websites. Since then, I've written several essential oil books as well, which are all available. Probably the best place to go is shoot me an email on my website or check out my website or shoot me an email. And yes, they are available in America at other my books are everywhere at different places from depending on which book you're after, which is kind of confusing, but it's just the way it works when you're self-publishing some and got publishers for others.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, cool. That's awesome. I love all of that. Okay, so you mentioned some miraculous things happening. Would you be willing to share some of those?
Yeah, of course. Probably with crystals, sometimes, after writing books and teaching so much about crystals, people actually ask me, so how do crystals work? And my answer is, I don't know how they work, but I've tried different things and I can't explain them with crystals. And when I do, when I post one of my videos on YouTube about one crystal and talk about my experiences, it's amazing how many comments start to fill underneath of people having the same experience as well. So probably, ones that I've used, there's a beautiful crystal for love called kunzite, which I used in kind of holding it each night, programming it, and visualizing the partner I wanted to attract. And I would do that night after night. I would have a candle next to a mirror on my bedside table as well to kind of bring in that twin flame energy. And I really feel that crystal actually helped get me in the vibration to attract the partner that I was with for 13 years, type of thing. And then after that relationship ended a couple of years ago, I went back to the Kunzite again, and the partner we actually tomorrow night celebrate our 1 year anniversary on the full moon in Aries. Yeah, work the same as well. So just by having them around, there's kind of I've asked something to happen, and there's been a slight shift that seems to work a bit more magically than if you hadn't have asked from it with a crystal.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, do you have any other stories, like maybe early on, that really solidified this path for you? That like where something magical or spiritual or unexplainable but really awesome happened?
Um, Probably there was nothing miraculous where I'm like, uh, the path is just sometimes. I guess it's like the analogy I could give you is it's like dating. We've all gone on dates with people. Sometimes you're like, oh, will I ring them? Should they ring me? Oh, they haven't bothered me, and it's difficult. And then when you actually find someone who you click with, it just kind of happens and progresses naturally. And I
Right.
guess my evolution and my growth over the last 30 years or so into Wicca and witchcraft and living this kind of lifestyle has happened so easily that there wasn't a lightning bolt moment that kind of went, this is the way. I wasn't, down and out and something changed kind of thing. I've used crystals and essential oils as a famous practice I teach. That's really, I feel, has turned around my life financially. And when I was in my 20s, would always run out of money, had some really tough kind of periods, and then kind of, again, coming into that magical, using essential oils and crystals, was able to turn that round. And now I never run out of money. I always have enough of what I need.
That's awesome. So, since you're on that topic, I'm sure people would love to know what crystals or essential oils would you recommend for money?
Awesome. Well, let me teach. This is probably the one that I've taught the most, and the feedback I've had from so many people is like, "Wow, that works." So what you need is you need a small citrine crystal, which is a beautiful yellow crystal. You need an essential oil known as bergamot, which is a citrus oil. And then, depending on which country you're in, I know in both Australia and the US, normally our highest currency note is a $100 bill or $100 note. So you need all three. So what you do is you may do this around a full moon. A full moon in Taurus would be the ideal time to do it each year, but any time that's feeling a bit magical for you. You sit down with those three items, you close your eyes and you visualize what does it feel like to feel abundant. Now, is that having a certain amount of money in the account? Is it paying off a bill? Is it going on a holiday or purchasing something? Whatever that may be. And you want to sense that, feel that as though it's actually real, and send that into the crystal. Now, as you're kind
Mm,
of getting to the end of that visualization, you get the bergamot essential oil, put a few drops on the crystal and the note, and then
okay.
you put the note and the or the bill and the crystal into your purse or your wallet. Now, how these all work together is crystals. The way they grow in a crystalline structure, they hold more energy. So even when you're not thinking about that feeling of abundance, that crystal that's nearby you is sending that out into your aura. Now, what's really cool about bergamot is it works in two different ways. First of all, you're obviously smelling it when you're doing that little practice. And we've all had times where we smell something that reminds us of maybe our grandmother's house or an ex's old cologne or something like that. So bergamot becomes what I call an aromatic anchor, which reminds you of feeling abundant. Now, why we use bergamot is the best oil I find for self worth. And self worth, how we feel about ourselves, often the world will respond to that and pay us accordingly. Now, the trick with a $100 note is you're never allowed to spend it. So every
Oh,
time you open your purse, instead of going, oh, I've got no money, you look and you go, well, I've always got money. Now, when
okay.
I first did this, I had to keep breaking that $100 note for emergencies, like I need that jacket kind of thing, and and then I'd replace it the next payday. But that kind of time where like payday's not till Thursday, you're like, oh, I don't have any money till then. When I actually had that discipline of like not spending that, just ignoring that note and just seeing it there and never breaking it, and even if I'm at a cash only place, I'll go walking and looking for an ATM. As soon as I committed to never spending it, I always had enough money to pay for what I needed to on the day I need to pay it. My money still goes up and down, but I always have enough. And for me, that's been a really amazing little magical way of using different gifts of nature to enhance something that's really important to a lot of us.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for
My
sharing that.
pleasure.
That's awesome. Okay, so now that people are intrigued, do you still teach your workshops somewhere where they can learn more?
Yeah, definitely. I have an online academy which you can find through my link to my website, where I have pre-recorded courses. Some of them are a couple of hours. I've got ones on the moon, crystals, oils, all that kind of thing. Through to one called the Nature's Healers course, which is a big like 6 month course that you can do self-paced.
Ooh.
I'm a Gemini, so I'm always looking for new things that entertain me. So I am constantly offering live classes as well. I have an audience in Australia, I have an audience in Europe, and I have an audience in America. So I do my best to try and accommodate for different time zones and that type of thing. So anyone who's following me on social media or gets my weekly newsletter that tells you what's happening astrologically each week will be kept up to date and can join on live classes as well, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so give us your website.
Yep, so just adambarralet.com is where you'll find me. But if you, whatever platform you like, you can jump on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I'll be there in some kind of form type of thing.
Okay, cool. And I will definitely post all the links with this and our podcast and everywhere this goes out. So they'll
Oh,
be
thank
easily
you.
visible for people. But okay, so I'm already like thoroughly impressed and excited to try this out. So thank you. Um, okay, so what happened um, in your progression with Lady Tomorrow? Because you're a high priest now, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess there in a general circle, and we laid tomorrow's circle. You start as an initiate, which is known as first degree. You then become a second degree, which is a priest or a priestess, and then the idea is then you then develop into third degree. Third degree is the level when you kind of is the recognition that you're kind of ready to leave the circle and start your own. And it's normally it's a discussion. You ask to go third with your high priestess or high priest. And for me, although I'm not at this point in time running my own individual circle or coven, I do feel that I'm working at that third degree level because I am constantly teaching, and I guess in a way I have it sounds really kind of cliche, but I have a global coven of different people that I'm teaching each and every day of how to work in tune with nature, what to do on each full moon, how the different seasons and the 8 festivals of the year resonate with each of the chakras and different things like that. So I'm kind of helping people and guiding people, although I don't actually have a formal circle that gets together at this point in time.
That's really cool though. And I think it's a very valid point because there are people all over that are seekers and they're looking for that guidance and looking to somebody that they feel like can help them and is qualified to do so. And I think that helps a lot, especially with how um, you have to be careful anymore, unfortunately, because some people just take advantage or they don't know what they're talking about and they're teaching things that aren't even valid or real. Um, so I think you're right. That's it. I can see how it was definitely time for that, and there's a need for that. So I think it's wonderful that you decided to go this route and have this offering online to people to help and lead and guide in that way. So thank you for that. I think it's very needed. Um, okay, so what do you feel like is in your future?
What's in my future? I guess I have a real thirst for nature. And just learning constantly, kind of thing. So the fun thing is, I've talked a lot about crystals and essential oils. New crystals are always being discovered. New essential oils are always being discovered. And in astrology, I talk not just about the kind of the main planets that we all know, like Venus and Jupiter and Pluto, but when you look at traditional astrology, if you think about how many feminine archetypes there are, there's not many. There's only two. There's the moon, which represents the mother, and Venus, which represents the lover. So basically, all women are good for is being a partner or a parent, which we know is not true. But
Right.
there are many other significant astrological bodies in what's called the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So they're quite close, and many of them have been named after different feminine deities. So, Juno and Ceres and Lilith and Psyche and Vesta and all these. And when we work with them, we can awaken a lot of really empowering feminine aspects, regardless of which gender we identify as. So I really love taking people. There's also been beyond Pluto more dwarf planets identified, which are really really interesting as well. So as I went for the future for me, I'm really interested in seeing what more we can learn about the finite details, the different feminine aspects we have within us, and then the new oils and crystals that are stepping forward each and every year, how they can help us go to the next level of this craziness and the little ride that we're all on.
Is there a new crystal that's come about that's kind of been a particular favorite for you or one you've enjoyed working with?
Cool. A new crystal that's come out recently. Do you know what? Not there are always ones that kind of interest me, but I'm a real stickler for an interesting crystal that was discovered in 1996. It's found in Namibia and it's been called Quantum Quattro. Now it's a combination of five different crystals, so which are all emotional healing ones. So there's malachite in there that helps to bring issues up. Another crystal known as shadowkite, which helps us understand an issue. There's a crystal called dioptase, which helps us to accept what has happened. And then chrysocolla is a really great crystal for helping us release pain and suffering from the past. And then it grows on a bed of smoky quartz, which is a bit of a hug. Now, I found that it's really interesting. It came out just before that shift of 2000. Really amazing, soft yet powerful in helping us just get through our stuff and realize that what's happened in the past doesn't have to always be a pain point, but actually can be a source of strength in us. And there are crystals popping up all the time, but Quantum Quattro, I'm still excited about that, even a few decades after it was first discovered.
So that is so funny because I would say a couple years ago, and people who have listened to the podcast for a while, because I've been doing it for a little bit, a few years, um, know that I've been on a healing journey with cancer, and it's metastatic, right? So, and in my research and my studies, I came across quantum quattro, and I immediately felt like I need this stone in my life. Like I need to find it. I have not found it yet. I have not forgotten about it. And I keep looking because I have this fear of buying crystals online because I want to make sure that they're ethically sourced, and that they're coming from good places. And so I've been searching in the stores here and there and around. Is that a kitty cat?
That is my little kitten, yes.
Oh, so precious. And I haven't found one yet. So is there somewhere you could recommend buying crystals or potentially online that you feel like is trustworthy?
Yeah, the first place I always recommend when people go, where do I get a crystal, is go to your crystal shops. And when it comes to rare crystals like quantum quartzo, it may not be in their best interest to have a pile of it there because not everyone's looking for it. So it's always worth having a conversation with the owner. Can they get it in? And a lot of the time they can bring it in for you. If that's um, if we can't get it from a local crystal shop, I guess then when you want to go online, you want to be buying from probably a first world country. It's amazing how many different from parts of Asia, unfortunately now, fakes are coming out or crystals being grown, or you know
Right.
sometimes they're just melting down drink bottles and recasting them as different crystals, kind of thing, like moldavite, which is a very popular crystal as well. So you want to look at kind of it's hard to buy online, but yeah, if you're buying mainly from America, from Europe, Australia, those kind of places, most of the time you can be guaranteed that you should be getting a real deal.
Cool. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, so I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever met or talked to Mama Vic also in Claremont. So she's the person I've been going to get a lot of my crystals that I have in my shop here. So thank you. I'm glad you brought this back to mind because it's been like, I don't know, a year since I've thought about this crystal because I kept searching and couldn't find it and I kind of gave up on it. So maybe the timing is right. So I will check with Mama Vic and see if I can find some. If she's got a
Yeah, I
contact.
may have ruined your day and a few other people that are listening today as well because it was discovered in 1996. There's only one batch of it. It is getting a little bit harder to find, but it is still definitely out there. So it's worth finding a piece, and people are always moving on their crystals and that kind of thing. But it's a good one to have in your collection if you're drawn to crystals.
Yes, yes. I have them all over my house and all around. And I feel like I sometimes fall into that category of not always knowing the best way to work with them. Like I bring them in and I know the properties of why I purchased them and what they do. And then I bring them in and I, sit with them and I kind of talk to them and vibe with them and ask them to help me with whatever that intention is that they align with. Um, and then I feel bad because they kind of just go on shelves all around my house. And then
Yeah.
they kind of just sit. And then every now and then when I remember on a really good sunny day, like close to the full moon, I'll gather them all up and I'll take them outside for like 30 minutes. Um, I like charging in sunlight. And I know the full moon is a thing too, but I feel like sunlight is good too. What are your thoughts on that as far as giving them sun and moon baths?
Yeah, a lot of people, when it comes to cleansing crystals, they'll have one uniform way for all of their crystals. So, like you said, the full moon's a classic example where everyone gathers them up and runs them outside, makes sure the neighbours aren't watching and think they're weird, puts them all out there, and then brings them back in the next morning. But if we think about what we know about the lunar energy, it's typically in most traditions a feminine energy. It's very yin, it's very magical, and that type of thing. So, putting crystals outside, like a ruby or a fiery carnelian or something like that, it's kind of like taking your parents out for a nice night, going clubbing and drinking shots of alcohol until 3 a.m. It doesn't quite work. So what I normally recommend is, there are many different aspects of nature. There's, like you said, the sun is really great for those more kind of vibrant crystals. The element of fire, earth, air, and water, our four magical elements. Work out what does each individual crystal resonate with most and put it out near that element and allow it to cleanse that way. And the more you treat your crystals like individuals, just like people, the more they'll start to sing and the more you'll actually build relationships with crystals one on one.
Do you think my crystals are happy sitting on the shelves?
Crystals spend thousands upon thousands of years, sitting in the ground, so they've got an aspect of patience. I encourage a lot of people to, make a bit of a practice on the weekend of, and this is why I send out a newsletter at the end of each week, kind of going, this is what's happening astrologically. This is the main crystal and the main essential oil I recommend for the next week, and you can either follow my guidance or choose what's happening for you for the week. And if you just choose one crystal and one essential oil to work with for the whole week, you start to develop a relationship with that. And if you were to do a different crystal each week of the year, you've then worked with over 50 crystals. And then when you are having a rough day, you're like, I know the one that makes me feel better, or I know the one that gives me a confidence boost. But a bit of crystal monogamy can go a long way.
Right, right. Okay, okay. Well, I love that, and I will have to sign up for your newsletter. That's exciting. So, okay, so what were your main um ways that you really started to study and learn about the crystals themselves? Did you have like a teacher yourself? Experience, books? What was it for you that really helped you?
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
me,
years here, but
yeah, for me, I never actually had a teacher who per se taught me about crystals. It was a combination of a bit of crystal monogamy, so sitting with crystals just like you do, and I'd learned a lot just by laying on the couch when I was younger with some music on and one crystal sitting on a chakra and see how that would feel. So based on my own experiences, reading books, but reading books from um, a critical thinking point of view. There's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of rubbish in books, and some authors I disagree with, and some I agree with. And I even say when I teach, I'm not correct. But our job is to work out what your experience is with that crystal in that way. So, but what I found, really interesting is I believe cultures in the past, because they didn't have the chaos and the distractions of the modern world that we do, they lived a lot more in tune with nature, with plants, and with crystals. So you'll often find, whether it be an emerald or a ruby or lapis lazuli or anything like that, different cultures would work with it in the same way. So that's got to teach you something. So looking at historically how it's been used, how modern day authors work with them, your own experience, put that all in a little blender, mix it up, and that's my beliefs in crystals.
I I totally agree with you on that. So I actually did a bunch of research on crystals myself at one point. It's been a few years ago. And I did do some of the historical digging like you're talking about. And I found it absolutely fascinating that these cultures, whether it was South America, Asia, Egypt, um, they were all using crystals for these similar purposes like you're talking about. And there's theoretically no way that they were able to communicate with each other and know that.
Yeah,
Like, it's not like they could call up and say, "Hey, this worked for me. So what are you doing with it?" Like, and it just
yeah.
was incredible to me
You're
to see
spot
that.
on. Turquoise is probably one of the most commonly found crystals in many, many different regions around the world, very big in North America. And it's always been used as a bridge between us and the gods. It doesn't matter whether you're in North America, whether you're in Europe, Africa, or Asia. Turquoise is normally, it's often used as eyes in different statues and that type of thing, but it's always seen as this bridge. And considering it gets its colour from copper, which is a conduit, it kind of does make sense that it helps to get things flowing. And a great one for conduit and a bridge between you and deity.
So, okay, that taught me something because I didn't know that you could find turquoise all over the world. I know it's huge here in North America and it was sacred to the natives here, but I didn't know it was all over. You could find it everywhere. So that's really cool.
Yeah, yep. Slightly different coloration and form just because of how nature grows crystals. But yeah, you'll find some beautiful Tibetan turquoise is a very spiritual kind of form of it. But yeah, you will find it in other places as well.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. I'm learning so much today already. Uh, So, okay. Was it basically the same thing for you when it came to the essential oils?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much as well. They, both crystals and essential oils. I'm sure for your listeners it will sound a bit more normal, but they will speak to me. They personify themselves as I get to know them. But again, yes, looking at how the plant has been used throughout cultures, the Greeks would categorize plants by the color of their flower. So any plant that has a white flower is associated with the moon, whereas a flower that is pink and that plant is associated with Venus, and yellow is Mercury, and so on, and that type of thing. so you can bring in that astrological aspect. What I find with essential oils, they're amazing for physical well-being, and I've had some profound kind of healing using them physically. But what they often do physically, they'll also do metaphysically as well. So you kind of, again, look at the culture, look at the flower color, look at the part of the plant where the oil comes from, look at your own experience, look at what it does physically, put it all in a bit of a mixing bowl, and that kind of helps you understand the magic of the essential oils in that spiritual context.
What is your or one of your favorite essential oils of all
Whoa,
time?
that's a really big ask as well. Just sitting behind me, actually, I don't know if I go the right way. There's my favourite 200, and that's not all of them. So
Oh,
I'm going to
wow.
dodge your answer slightly. Rose would probably be my favourite essential oil, but I do love the conifers or the evergreen, the big trees. So your pines, your spruces, your firs, your cedars, your junipers, cypresses. There's something in them that's always very supportive when we're going through the challenges of everyday life. So I love all them.
Right, right. Yeah, I love rose too. It's hard to find, I feel like in its where it's not been so diluted or, you know, fake.
Yeah,
Essentially.
it's a big problem. It doesn't matter whether you're in America, here in Australia, Europe, anywhere. There's no actual legislation or governing on the labeling of essential oils. So anyone can put whatever they want in there and call it a pure or organic essential oil. And that's the biggest problem I find with teaching people about essential oils. The majority, 70% of what's sold as lavender around the world is not from a plant. It's made in a lab. 99%
Ooh,
of all vanilla is not from the vanilla orchid. So a lot of the time, people have had bad experiences or nil experiences, or their magic isn't working because they're working with something that was made in a lab and doesn't have the essence of Mother Nature.
that's true. So, and I completely agree with you. So like I feel kind of like if you can get it at the dollar store, it's probably not real. Um, so if you're paying $1.25 for it, then it's probably synthetic in some form. So
I,
what
I
would
I
your
would definitely agree. Yeah, and obviously, if you think about an oil like cedarwood or sandalwood or frankincense, where they come from big trees, as opposed to something like lavender or orange, which those fruit grow quickly, or lavender grows within a couple of years. If they're all the same price, that's a red flag as well, kind of thing. Because some plants grow very quickly, others you don't get an oil from a tree until it's 30 to 50 years old.
wow. Wow.
And,
What
and some
do you,
even until you've got to wait till the plant starts to die before the oil actually forms in it, like Palo Santo.
oh wow. Okay. That's fascinating. How do they get do you know how they get oil from a tree?
Yeah, so of the 250,000 different plants we have on this planet, only 3,000 actually produce an essential oil. So not all plants do make one. They will be in different. Sometimes it will be in the wood, the bark, the flowers, the fruit, the roots, the leaves or the needles and that type of thing. When it comes to like wood oils, like cedar wood or sandalwood, normally the oil forms in the center of the tree, the heartwood. So basically, what you have to do is when the tree falls over or when the tree is maybe, harvested, where I get a lot of my wood essential oils from, they're normally the byproduct of the lumber industry and they kind of distill the sawdust or the offcuts and that kind of thing. For most essential oils, you put them in a big distiller with steam, and it will actually force the essential oil out of the plant material. So, yeah. But first of all, the tree's got to grow to a certain size before you can get that.
Right, right. Hmm. What do you recommend people do to try to find an actual legit essential oil?
Yeah, I think you've got to look. Either talk if it's a smaller company, you may be able to talk to the people that actually distill it. If it's a larger company, you've got to be kind of a bit critical of the site and the information they provide. First of all, you want to make sure that offer some kind of form of testing. Now, where I get most of my essential oils from, I get them from a company where they're actually tested by a third party instead of by themselves. Because you can imagine if
Gotcha.
a company tests their own oils, of course they're going to want to go, look, they're real, kind of thing. So that's really
Right.
important. And I also look for oils that have been grown in the native country. As we often know, we feel more comfortable in our home country. I just
Yeah.
spent all September in America, loved it, but wait to get back home to Australia. So,
Right.
although lavender does grow beautifully in parts of America and in Australia, it's native to France and Bulgaria in that region. So, that's going to be where you're going to get the best lavender from a therapeutic, physical point of view and chemistry point of view, but also energetically. If we want to work with lavender from a nature based way, we want to get lavender that grew as nature intended on the
Right.
planet where it was meant to be, kind of thing.
Right. Oh yeah. I love that. I love that. Um, okay, so tell me more about the astrology aspects. Was there an influence there on how you learned with that, or does it, how did you dive into that world?
Yeah, I was blessed to. Another thing that I do love is tarot, and I had an amazing teacher by their name. She's actually got a therapy background and psychotherapy and different things like that, and she taught me tarot. And it was amazing. We would go to her home and we did one card a week. So we would talk about, on the first week, we talked about the full and unpicked it and how the psychological meanings and all that for 3 hours on one card. So you can
Nice.
imagine by the end of the course how intimately we know. So when each of those cards comes onto the table, we've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, and she'd make us do exercises throughout the week to prepare for that. So we finished tarot, and I was like, this has been the most amazing experience. And she also was used to teach tarot, used to teach astrology. So me and some of the other people in the group were like, you need to teach us astrology. And so she started to do that. Now, astrology, I think to learn everything about astrology, you'd need to study as much as a doctor would. It's 8 to 10 years kind of thing. So I, I specialize in a few different things. I'm fascinated by how retrogrades impact us. I love looking at birth charts. I love looking at the asteroids and that type of thing. Um, I'm not so much into predictive astrology of the best day to meet your soulmate or buy a new car kind of thing. I'm more looking at the global influences that create our cosmic DNA from the moment we were born. Um, and what I find really interesting, I mentioned about asteroids before. The asteroids that were in the most prominent position when you were born are normally the deities that you're most connected to. And I found that time and time again. So, for me, gods like Pan and Artemis, which are very nature based, were right near my sun when I was born, kind of thing, which I find really fascinating. So, I do astrology readings where I go through about 200 asteroids and find the ones that are most prominent for people. And time again, it's a bit of a mind blow.
That is super cool. Okay, so how do people like find out, how would somebody know? Like, is that something that they would have to go to somebody like you that specializes in that to find that out? Like, how would somebody find that out?
Probably, there's an amazing website just called astro.com. And astro.com, you can actually put in and find out where all these asteroids are. It would be, it takes me, who's got experience doing it, a good 2 to 3 hours to go through 200 different asteroids for someone when I do these readings before I actually meet with them. So someone who's just starting off, it would probably be a bit of an effort, but the internet's a fabulous thing, and if you're looking in the right corners, you'll find what you're looking for.
Right. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Well, now I'm like just so interested in finding that out. And I think there are so many people that wonder, who their deities are or how to discover or even just get like on a path of a possibility of who a deity is that they could work with. So that's fascinating information to help people like give them a starting point and just discovering, this could be a very real possibility and seeing if that aligns with them. So that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that because I think that is one of the big ones that I get asked a lot is, how do I find out who my deity is? And I hate to say it, but I just tell them meditate and ask and see who
Yeah.
shows up.
Yep. Yeah, it's normally when people are booking in for that kind of reading, I normally say, are there any goddesses or gods or things there's also asteroids that govern plants and animals as well that you resonate with, and there was one person who actually listed 9 things, and all of them were in her top 10, and that was a real mind blow kind of thing. So she was obviously in tune with what she resonated with, and it came up in the astrology. They're all hanging around prominent parts in her chart.
That is so cool. Okay, so how much do you think our birth charts and our astrology like impact us as people?
Um, I would say as much as your DNA does. Do you know what I mean? So, in with genetics and DNA, what's now called epigenetics, we can have predispositions for, a certain disease or ailment that our parents had or that type of thing. But it doesn't, depending on the lifestyle that we choose to live, it doesn't mean that it'll actually present, kind of thing. My father had problems with his heart, but hopefully I'm eating the right things and having an active lifestyle that I'll be able to reverse it around, even though I'm predisposed to that. It's the same with astrology. There's no good chart, there's no bad chart. That's just your cosmic DNA, and that kind of plays out in who you are, but based on the environments that you allow yourself to be in and that you grow up in, that's going to have an impact as well. So I hate people who will go, oh, well, I'm a Scorpio, so that's why I can't do that, or, making excuses because of their chart. It's just I call it your cosmic DNA, just like your general DNA.
Right, right. You have that almost free will to decide whether to give into it or use it as a touching point to decide to do something different.
Yeah, and the joy that I find astrology brings is it helps people to better understanding of themselves, and the more we know ourselves, understand ourselves, and have maybe a reasoning or behind that, that can be really quite empowering to help us discover why we're attracted to certain people, why we find ourselves in certain circumstances, why a recurring archetype person keeps coming into your life in that kind of way. Sometimes astrology can kind of go, hey, this could be why, and when you learn that lesson, it'll stop happening.
Right. Oh, that's so fascinating. That's so cool. Okay, so gosh, what led you to write the books? Was there something within you that just said, I've got to do this? Or,
The very first book, I never intended to. Well, actually, when I was in New York for the 6 months, I actually wasn't able to work. My partner had a very nice paying job, and so it was actually really nice in my early 30s to have this opportunity to kind of go, you don't need to work, what would you like to do? And I'd actually started kind of penning a book, which was actually more about the lessons we get from animals. I'd worked at the Toronto Zoo and had a strong attachment and, loved animals. So I'd started writing a book about working with a different animal each week of the year. When I moved back to Australia, started working in that crystal shop, I met someone who was opening a new publishing company and he said, you know a lot about crystals, I'd love you to write a crystal book. So that was the first one that I actually had to write. I was, kind of commissioned to write in that type of way. And I enjoy the experience. I'd love to disappear into the woods and just write books. There's about 5 that I'd like to write if I had time um, to do that. So yeah, I love writing now, and yeah, we'll continue writing books because I love that expression and sharing those ideas and seeing what it unlocks for people.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you feel like you have any spiritual gifts that are kind of your strengths that you work with?
Um, spiritual gifts. Probably, to kind of link back to what I was talking about with the asteroids before. Um, the prominent asteroids in my chart are like Pan and Artemis, which are very much kind of that nature based, and even Artemis also. The Romans knew her as Diana, which is a moon goddess or a lunar goddess as well. And another prominent god that's in my chart is Apollo, which is very much about the arts and expression and that type of thing. Um, I guess I'm blessed with the ability to take large amounts of information. I'm a sucker for gobbling it all up, but then also being able to put it into digestible ways and easy to relate ways. There are plenty of spiritual books out there that I bought that sounded interesting, and I must admit the languaging that the person uses, I have no frigging idea what I'm reading. So I guess yes, I'm claircognizant in my tarot readings. Guidance comes to me sometimes with the crystals and the oils. I get that kind of just guidance where I just clear knowing. But I guess my other gift that I've been blessed with is the ability to understand the different aspects of the gifts of nature, and then being able to take all that information and share it in ways that hopefully a common person can go, I know what to do with that. That makes sense. That kind of way. Yeah.
Very cool. So you feel like you have that like clear cognizance of that like when you're doing your readings or your but yeah, when you're doing like card readings and stuff, does it just kind of drop in for you?
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I'd really like to share that might really help a few listeners, because when I found this out, it really helped me. I would always go and get throughout the years you go and get tarot readings or psychic readings and that kind of thing, and every freaking reader would say, you're really psychic, don't you? You're really clairvoyant and that kind of thing. I'd be like, I'm not getting visions. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I'm sure I am, but I was never getting visions. And it wasn't until one particular reader explained to me, he said, there are different forms in which the intuition can come through. And it's often referred to as the clair. So we may see, we may feel, some people even taste or hear different things. And, he helped me understand that I was claircognizant, where I will be doing a reading or I may be just talking to someone at some point and I just suddenly know something. And a lot of the time in my readings, I will just say stuff, and people are like, yeah, and I don't know where that comes from, kind of thing. So know that if you have been told, anyone who's tuning in, that you're psychic, but you're not seeing visions or you're not hearing a guide talk to you like other people talk about, that guidance can come in from different ways. And for me, it's just this idea of I tell people, and they're like, yeah, spot on.
Awesome. Do you feel like that also kicks up when you do like your astrology readings and stuff too?
I think so. Yeah, there's that kind of it's just a confidence in the things that I guess come spring into your mind. There's a confidence like, no, this is right. It almost feels like it's fact, even though you may not have. If someone was to ask you to explain exactly how you knew that or how you justify that, you may not be able to go on that path. And I guess that's where the magical aspects of psychic abilities come in, and that's how, for me, claircognizance works.
Do you feel like, because I know like when you're developing, especially that one, you have to trust yourself and you have to, that's what helps develop that confidence is just trusting the information you got and then trying to see if you can validate it. Do you feel like looking back that that's something you kind of had all along when you started your journey?
I think so. For me, I guess I've been blessed. I think it's always healthy to have critical thinking, and to be a little bit skeptical, kind of thing. There are a lot of people that will, like you said, there are people that are teaching things or passing things on. That I know people that that they do a 2 day course and then they're a shaman, kind of thing. Whereas shamanism is a whole emergent lifestyle. Um, so I think it's always good. When we look at the third eye chakra, a lot of people say, "Oh, that's your psychic center." I actually find the third eye chakra is our understanding center, where we use our intellect and our intuition combined to work out how is the world working as it unfolds before me, kind of thing. So I think yes, you definitely need to balance the third eye chakra. We're all really good with the intellect. Bring in a bit of intuition, but don't let one or the other dominate. Let them dance together.
Right, right, right. Cool. So, do you feel like there's been something with you from the beginning, kind of guiding you on your journey from the moment you first walked into the crystal shop to now?
Probably, those that have tuned in that are maybe a few decades on this earth will probably look back at different things that have happened in their life and go, okay, I understand why that happened, and everything kind of sets you up in that way. So, yes, I do believe that there's a presence or presences around me in that way. I'm not that strict on exactly what form that may be in. I know it helps our little human minds to personify that as a deity or an angel or something like that type of thing. But yeah, when I stop and when I don't let the noise of everyday life distract me, there definitely feels like there's something around, there's something guiding me, and you know just have to go along for the ride.
Love it. Love it. Any final thoughts or advice for people listening?
We've talked a lot about crystals. We've talked a lot about essential oils. We've talked about a whole range of different things in this awesome conversation. But I think that another thing that I love is Shinrin Yoku, which is known as forest bathing, and the healing benefits we get just by being out in nature. The more the Why I work with the things I work with is because they are conduits that help me connect with nature. But there's no better place to be than out in the woods, on the beach, or wherever that special natural place must be for you. It doesn't have to be a spiritual thing. It doesn't have to be paganism. It doesn't have to be Wicca. It doesn't have to be witchcraft. For the 6 million years we've been a species on this planet, 99.99% of the time we lived in harmony with nature. That's where the magic is, and I would really encourage people, the more you can be out in nature and in touch with the natural world, she'll support you physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
Very true. Very true. Well, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so just to make sure we've got this. So I've got your website, and that's where people can learn more about you, sign up for your newsletter, um, and maybe find access to some of your books.
Yes, definitely. Yep.
Okay. And what are your other main outlets that people might want to get in touch with you and follow along, like on social media?
Yeah, so YouTube. I've got quite an extensive range of videos. On a whole range of crystals, essential oils. A few angels, and looking at different things like I've got videos for the 8 celebrations of the year. Instagram, I'm posting about 3 times a day on Instagram, so I'm quite present there. And then Facebook, I'm also posting there. And then I do a couple of podcasts, not by myself now. There is one called The Blessed Journey, which I've wrapped up, which was a solo one. And I do, if you love essential oils, I have a podcast on Spotify and Apple, and also on YouTube called Fellowship in Essential Oils with one of the UK's best aromatherapists. And then I've just launched with 3 of my crystal friends in Australia and America a new podcast called Crystal Confab, where the 4 of us, which have very different kind of backgrounds, all talk about a different crystal a week. And it's been really fun. We're only a few episodes in, but it's amazing the magic that we're creating at the moment as well. So whether you're a newsletter person, a podcast, a video, or just like to scroll on Instagram, like a Gemini, I'm everywhere.
I love that. Okay, awesome. Well, I will hunt those down and post everything, all the links, so people have access to you. And if somebody wants to get a reading, whether it's maybe tarot or astrology, are those on your website as well?
They certainly are, yes.
Wonderful. Well, Adam, thank you so much for being here and talking with me today. I have honestly learned so much already, and have really enjoyed this. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Now you've just got this shopping list of you've got to go get your bergamot and your citrine, and you've got to try and find that bloomin' quantum quattro. But it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. All right, guys, until next time, stay magical.